always something fun to see here in Chinatown. You'll see the pagoda here past 18th Street, some outdoor art underneath the bridge here. I'll concede to you that sometimes other boat captains may come down to Chinatown just to mix up the monotony of their typical route. Don't wish you for to think that I was misleading you. That's actually a private event, so they're kind of just doing their own thing. Right on. Lovely skyline view behind you that we'll enjoy shortly. When we come down here, we're going to turn around and you're going to see an entirely different kind of technology on the bridge over here. We've talked about these bascule trunnion ones that kind of swing open, right? Single leaved or double leaved. And then down here is a bridge from 1914 that's called a vertical lift bridge. Check this out, it's incredible. The entire thing will just climb up the stationary towers that are on either bank. When this thing was fully operational, opening up for cargo vessels all the time, they said this thing could go from at the bottom closed all the way to the top in 45 seconds. Knowing that number and striving to reduce it would be important, right? Because we all know time is money. Think of Chicago as once being the most rapidly growing city in the world, once declared the busiest seaport on the planet. You talk about westward expansion, a small town in 1833, 300 residents. 1837, 3,000 residents. By 1850, Chicago had 100,000 residents, and half of them would have been various immigrant groups. And they're the ones who truly built the city, the railroads, the canals, the buildings. By the time of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, there were 300,000 people in Chicago. By the time we rebuilt and hosted the World's Fair of 1893, the year of the White City, we hit a cool million. Yeah, very rapidly growing city, built on industry, built on an old swamp by the Native Americans called Chicago. Chicago, as I may have mentioned earlier, referenced the stinky onions that grew in this old swamp. We still do watch trains go across this thing. I've seen it go up on tours in real time, just 5 times for boats, 3 times for yachts, twice for barges. And unlike the other bridges in the city, which only open Wednesday and Saturday, beginning and end of boat season for sailboats, this one opens all the time, all year long. There are several bridges downriver where all the barge activity's coming from. You pop inside the pilot house, you'll hear a guy down at 111th Street asking for a bridge to get opened up down there. Oftentimes you'll hear guys say something like, hey, open up the Canal Street Bridge, I'm coming. And that's this one right here. It's amazing. And as we come about, as that sun begins to set here in the summer in Chicago, look how that light will smack up against our skyscrapers, hopefully showcasing for you this skyline, deepening that understanding and appreciation for architecture, the waterways where everything kind of hinges upon. Make sure you ride the L trains, check out the neighborhoods, engage in the lakefront, the river. It's a big city with a small town feel, and it's these neighborhoods which make it so. And these waterways, oh my goodness, they've been widened, they've been straightened, they've been dredged, the waterways have been reversed. All the water in Chicago, as they used to call it, used to dump into Lake Michigan. As the industry came in Chicago for all those decades throughout the 1800s, I'm not exaggerating, every year hundreds of people died from waterborne illnesses. Some years the sanitation was so bad over 1,000 folks a year were dead. Fires were common, it was kind of a dangerous place, right? You know, a big town growing with all that industry. Now, the Army Corps of Engineers would finally come to Chicago in the year 1892. They began what became an 8-year-long process to reverse the flow of the main branch of the river. They dredged out the main and south branches 15 to 20 feet deeper than they actually were. Then they built what is now called the 28-mile sanitary and ship canal. The canal slices through a lateral moraine, which even natives and French explorers knew was a portage. You carry your stuff up over that, you end up in Chicago. It linked up this river system with the Illinois and Des Plaines rivers, which lead down to the Mississippi via then down to the Gulf of Mexico. Yes. The dredging process, the completion of that canal, yeah, it pulled the water off of Lake Michigan utilizing gravity. It would channel away all that bad stuff, leaving for us clean, delicious drinking water on beautiful Lake Michigan. There goes Captain Grab doing his Chinatown trip to end his day as he and I point at each other, as has been our custom for about 10 years. That's my homie Greg. Now look at this, friends. The river, the engineering here, the industry. Look at this. The address of Continental Paper Grading Company is 1623 South Lumber Street. Does that just stand to reason and kind of make you think, wow. Even the doors on this building, look at those wooden doors. They look like the wooden doors that you'll find on wooden buildings that I'm told are in the country called, they call them barns. I got homies in the city whose wives have barn doors in their condos. I'm like, Brian, what is this? She's like, well, Sarah wanted it, so I got a barn door. Friends, get a load of our skyline here. Straight ahead of us, the Black Tower, the Sears Tower, 1,451 feet in height. Out there to the forward, the silver building with the architectural spire, Trump Tower number 2, 1,389 feet in height. The John Hancock, which you can just see past the Trump, 1,128 feet in height. Remember the St. Regis by Jeannie Gang with the blow-through floor? 1,198 feet tall. That's the third tallest. The fourth tallest building is only 9 feet taller than the fifth, which is the Hancock. The fourth tallest building is the Aeon Center. It's that blocky white stone tower, vertical skinny black windows.
Yeah.
Built in the 70s by Edward Durrell Stone with the firm Perkins and Will. And there goes a beautiful Chris Craft to our left. Yeah, that boat, yeah, that's what's up. Slightly cooler than my inflatable kayak. And then to have some fun with architecture here as you enjoy this skyline view. See that beautiful, very tall luxury rental out there made of a series of rectangles? It's called Nima. A man from Uruguay designed it. Uruguayan architect Rafael Vignoli. Rafael Vignoli designed Nima. You'll note it's a tribute to the tallest skyscraper in Chicago. Remember the Bundle 2 construction? The series of bundles, same premise there, but far more contemporary. Nima sits over there at Roosevelt and Lakeshore Drive, right by Soldier Field. Here comes this push boat flying by us. I can't help but feel like it's the same one we saw earlier. But in any event, enjoy that. Enjoy the view here. And remember, as you gallivant about the city and enjoy all this stuff, remember we do owe a great debt of gratitude, strange as it sounds, for allowing Chicago to become what it is. And that was a very sad and tragic event, right? The Great Chicago Fire of 1871. Fires were so common in Chicago, I think I told you, they called the city the tinderbox. It was a matter of if, not when. Whenever fires broke out, people would begin to evacuate, thinking that maybe it would get out of control. You didn't want to be here to find out. Well, the 7th fire of that year started at 9 p.m. on October 8, 1871. There were reports of a fire in a barn out on DeKoven Street. The barn fire on DeKoven Street started, I'm not even joking, just out yonder there, near where it says La Fitness, which of course is a French bistro. So the fire department is marching out to the country to fight the 7th fire of the year. By the time they finally get there, there are 6 buildings on fire. Like the neighborhood is on fire. They recognize this is not good. They set off all the alarms to finally let everyone know, now you gotta get out. 300,000 people begin to evacuate Chicago as they watch in horror as 25-mile-an-hour winds push the flames from that barn all the way into downtown. It jumped onto the river. What people thought might have been a buffer to save them from the flames became a catalyst. The flames got into the business district by day 2, and on days 2 and 3, that's when most of the destruction occurred. That's when the fire got its hottest. Cast iron storefronts actually melted off the fronts of buildings. That's how hot this swirling firestorm got here in Chicago. 60% of the city is destroyed over 3 days. That's about 4 square miles of land reduced to rubble. The city takes toll in the aftermath of what happened. They declared 17,000 buildings wiped out. They stated that 100,000 people in Chicago were left homeless, 1 in 3 Chicagoans, and the death toll they put at 300 bodies. I'll bet you that number was higher, but 300 is what they gave us. With all that said, this tragedy shook the earth. We were already a part of, major global networks, the Great Lakes, the St. Lawrence Seaway, the Erie Canal. They had been operating for about 4 decades. Chicago was becoming this major industrial hub, and then boom, gone in 3 days. Anybody who lived here, who had the means and interest to invest in Chicago, they knew they'd make out like bandits. There's an old expression in Chicago regarding property values in Chicago, and it said that any man who owned himself a garden plot stood on his head and imagined himself a millionaire. You could go from zero to hero in Chicago by just having something to sell to somebody. And that's why developers began to ask the question, hey, how can we build taller? 5 stories is not enough, I want to go taller. 1885, William LeBaron Jenney, his revolutionary steel frame, giving rise to skyscrapers. His first building was 10 stories in height. That was twice the height you could build in Chicago. If you double anything, it's relative, it's a big deal. If you employ a new material, that's spellbounding. The race continues today to build taller, to go bolder, folks. Because this here city, built on a lake, on top of a swamp, is a city now built from the ashes of the original, we of course call Chicago the second city. Welcome, welcome to the second city. We also are the Windy City, the city of big shoulders, the city that works. We are known as the hog butcher to the world, Paris on the prairie. More recently, Chi-Town, Chi-City. If you're cool, I am not. And in the winter, during the 9.5 months that we experience winter here in Chicago, welcome to Shiberia. Terrible nickname. We don't talk about the winter, not on the summer of George, on a beautiful summer's day. Folks, if you had a few laughs, if you had a good time, learned a few things, please make some noise for the captain, the crew, myself, you. Thank you, yeah. We totally did it. A 90-minute journey on the Chicago River.